Back with you here on the Better Angle. We are going to dive into some futures in the Eastern Conference in the NBA. Coming up in about 20 minutes, we'll play Glitch in the System. And then we're going to dive into football in the final hour because we have a lot of football talk. And based on our conversation in the break that none of you were able to hear, but we will repeat some of it coming up, is that we have a lot of disagreements on what teams are going to be good next year in the NFL and what teams might struggle a little. So that'll lend itself to a great conversation coming up about 40 minutes from now. But for now, Cam, in the present moment, we got to talk about the Eastern Conference in the NBA because it is, this is, you know how like leading up to the Super Bowl for like 2 weeks, we talk nothing else but like Super Bowl talk, and it just gets exhausting. And by the time the Super Bowl's here, you're like, thank goodness, I'm so sick of regurgitating the same thing over and over and over. That's what it's going to be like for the offseason in the NBA in terms of the Eastern Conference. This phrase, the East is wide open, is going to be used over and over and over again. And by the time the season gets here, we're going to be sick of talking about how wide open the East is. But that's the reality that we are in right now, with Tyrese Halliburton going down with the Achilles for the Pacers, Damian Lillard for the Bucks, Jason Tatum for the Boston Celtics. And so you look at the odds boards right now, and you have a lot of teams that aren't typically near the top of it. Cavs, they lead the show, plus 275 at BetMGM. You have the Knicks 3-1. The Orlando Magic. How many years has it been, Cam, since the Orlando Magic were top 3 on the odds board to win the Eastern Conference title at 4-1 right now? I mean, this could be a good year for the Magic.
Yeah, it could be a great year for the Orlando Magic. And shout out to our guy, Kenny. He said since 2009, since the Magic were top 3 on the odds board. So that's going back to the Dwight Howard era of the Orlando Magic when he was dominating the league. And shout out to Dwight Howard, who's going to be a Hall of Famer when that induction ceremony happens over there in Springfield. But this Eastern Conference is going to look very different when you get to the top 6 teams in the playoffs. And so if you need a refresher on who finished top 6 this past playoff run, Cleveland number 1, Boston 2, Knicks were 3. You had the Bucks 4 and the Pacers 5. 6 was the Detroit Pistons, who surprised everybody. Shout out to Jamie Bickerstaff and Cade Cunningham, who made his first All-Star. Jalen Duren. I mean, Isaiah Beef Stew. I hate his nickname. I think he could be more creative, but he's a dude that you do not want to see. But the pieces that they have in Detroit is special. But, Kate, we could very well see 4, maybe 5 teams in that top 6 from the past playoff run in the Eastern Conference not even be in the top 6 for this upcoming season. I believe that Milwaukee, I believe that Indiana, and I believe that for sure the Boston Celtics will not be top 6 in the Eastern Conference playoffs for next year. So you can slide in, as we talked about the Orlando Magic. I think you slide in the Orlando Magic, you slide in the Atlanta Hawks, you slide in the Philadelphia 76ers. I know, everybody, yes, Joel Embiid, Paul George, 2 guys that just cannot stay healthy. It's not their fault. Injuries are just something that you can't control, right? But with this Philly team, if healthy, they could potentially be a team that is number 1 or number 2 in the Eastern Conference. So that just kind of gives more credence to this conversation of how wild and crazy the East is. We talked about the Wild Wild West before in so many ways, but it's going to be the Wild Wild East when we get down to it, because there's going to be so many teams in play to try and position themselves in the top 6. But Orlando is a team with the moves that they've been able to make, and adding Desmond Bane, which I believe was a great pickup for this group. One of the worst three-point shooting teams in the NBA last year, if not the worst in the league. You add a guy like Desmond Bane that not only shoots the 3-ball well, but he can score the basketball, but he can rebound, he can assist, he can play make, and that's going to bode well for guys like Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner, who are one of the more impressive young duos at the forward spot that we have in the league. And we had Scott Agnes on, who covers the Fever and the Pacers. He discussed Mo Wagner, who re-upped with the Orlando Magic just for a 5-year deal for 1 year. He wants to try and run it back to see if Orlando can get to the NBA Finals. And Wendell Carter Jr., former Bull. He's a guy that at that center spot can add some pieces or add some added production for this team from that position. So Orlando is a group, Kate, that you really have to keep your eyes on And I'm going to put some money down on the Orlando Magic getting to the NBA Finals. Now, this is very early on, and if you want to place those futures bets, this is the time to do it when it comes to the NBA of a team like Orlando or a team like Atlanta or a Philadelphia 76ers team. And if you feel strongly that things can go their way and stay healthy, they could possibly represent the Eastern Conference in the NBA Finals. I'm not sure where you are with all of that, Kate, especially with the top 6 looking totally different. But again, here we go. Maybe we need a ticker on the screen right now, the amount of times that we say the East is wide open. It's wide open. So I'm sure we're far into the double digits when it comes to that.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Cam, on Orlando. Desmond Bane coming over, he came into the league in 2020, so he is not a seasoned vet by any means. But for this Orlando Magic team, he is kind of a veteran player, and he'll bring that locker room presence too. That, like, I mean, as you get deeper into the season, postseason comes along, like he's played in postseason games. He kind of has just a little bit more perspective that he can offer some of these younger players, like Paolo Banchero. And I know Paolo's been in the league a couple years, and he was drafted. He's only 2 years removed from, or 2 years younger than when Desmond Bane came in, but he still provides a little bit more like leadership, I think, that this Orlando Magic team could use. And you mentioned the shooting. Like, Orlando's defense has been awesome over the last couple seasons. They're top in the league in defense, it feels like, every year, but their offense just goes cold. And that happened a couple times in the playoffs this past season. And the year before against Cleveland, is that they just couldn't score. And so now you add Desmond Bane, and that gives you a lot more scoring. Kenny threw out in the chat, and Kenny, I think this is actually a pretty good look, or pretty good thought, is that could Paolo Banchero take the next step this year and win MVP? His odds are extremely far down the board. He's sitting at 66-1 at BetMGM. And so you're getting a decent, I mean, more than a decent number on that. I think Paolo Banchero, before his career is over, will have at least one MVP, maybe 2. I mean, he is one of the, it's interesting, Cam, like we talk about faces of the league. Like, why isn't Paolo Banchero's name thrown out more? He and Anthony Edwards, I guess he's maybe a year or two still too young. Ant came into the league in 2020 as well with Desmond Bane. So maybe Paolo needs another year or two. But do you expect him to be a top tier player when he's in his prime?
No doubt about it. I mean, this is another former #1 overall pick and also rookie of the year when he came into the league. I mean, with his size and his skill set, he's a hell of a matchup for any defender. And what's going to take Paolo to the next level is going to be his outside shot. I think anything below the three-point arc is something where it's fair game for Apollo, whether it's a pull-up or getting right to the rim. I saw him this past season live in person against the Chicago Bulls, and what he was able to do was very early on in the season. But he's just a guy that no matter where you put him, especially mid-range or on the block, he's going to abuse you because he has the size and the strength to just physically overpower you and score the basketball. So what teams were able to do this past season is to force him more into a jump shooter and really load up. And as you hear a lot of coaches and players say, try and build a wall similar to what you do against Giannis to prevent them from trying to drive downhill to make the game easier for themselves by scoring at the rim. They're forcing Paolo to shoot the basketball more. So if he unlocks that part of his game, then I'm with you. I think he gets an MVP before his career is said and done, but still fairly young. And I don't want to make this a ageism conversation when it comes to say that he's not going to be an MVP because he's too young, but you need to see Orlando get that #1 seed in the East. You need to see Orlando be a team that has been, I'm not going to say dominant throughout the season, similar to what we saw with Oklahoma City Thunder and the Cleveland Cavaliers, but he needs to be a guy that drops 40s, 45s, 50s, and have this team winning and playing fun basketball, because that's of it, right? I mean, one of the big reasons for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander winning the MVP this past season just wasn't the scoring, but it was also his efficiency and how he was able to have his production aid his team and win. He was also able to get it on the defensive end too. So that's what set Shai apart from out there. It set Shai apart for me 2 years ago when I thought he should have won MVP. He should be back-to-back MVP award winners. But Paolo is a dude that has everything that you need when it comes to being an NBA MVP. And it's a big season for him. And also Franz Wagner. They're a duo that Orlando has invested so much in and trying to build this team around them to make it work. When you add in head coach Jamal Mosley and what he is and what his mentality is, and Kate, you talked about Orlando defensively and how tough they are on that side of the floor, it's because of Jamal Mosley. And it's just a no-nonsense attitude that he brings for a team that needs it, because this is fairly a young group. And we didn't mention the name of Jalen Suggs, who went down with that knee injury and missed the remainder of the regular season last year. But they have the right pieces to really open up eyes in the Eastern Conference and have Paolo in a position to be in that MVP conversation. So he's going to have to do it from beginning to end, though. And that's the thing with Paolo when it comes to MVP, because it's going to be a long shot, as you mentioned, 66-1. The odds are for Paolo to win NBA MVP for 25-26. So we'll see how it goes for Orlando.
And also, if you think back to SGA winning MVP this year, like, he was certainly in the conversation, and a lot of people, you could make the argument that he should have won last season. Jokic took it home last season. So maybe this is something for Apollo. Like, he needs to take that next step, be a part of the conversation. And then the year after that is the year to bet on him, because that's kind of, as we've seen throughout NBA history with MVPs, like, they get there, they arrive, and they're close. They're in the conversation. They don't win it that year, but the next year they come back, have a similar performance or even better, then it's their turn to win it. So that might be the way to play Apollo, is kind of temperate this season, but know that in a year, 2 years from now, he could certainly be one of the people that you would want to look at. Cam, you mentioned the Philadelphia 76ers. I feel like they are not being talked about at all in the East when we do say the East is wide open, but it's because of all the injuries. And Joel Embiid, like, can you count on him staying healthy for a full season? I will not be putting any money on Philadelphia, just because it's the same song and dance with him every single year. Is that regular season, he's there, he's dominating, he's playing unbelievable basketball. Postseason comes around and his body kind of just fails him and falls apart, and Paul George is not getting any younger. So like, would you be willing to put any of your hard-earned money on Philadelphia to win the East, even though, like, they have so much talent, but it just never pans out?
Yeah, you know what? Can we bring up the odds boards for the Eastern Conference of who can win that thing? Because there are a few teams, and I thought Orlando is one when it comes to winning the Eastern Conference. But there are a few teams that I will put my hard-earned money down to win the East. The Orlando Magic, the Philadelphia 76ers. I hate that I'm going to say this, Kate. I really hate that I'm going to say this. But the Cleveland Cavaliers. Yes, I feel that the Cleveland Cavaliers would be the third team of those three to win the East, just because of what they're bringing back, the run that they had last year. Again, the East is wide open for the 50th time on the better.
That's the fifth time this segment we've said that.
But Cleveland is a team that, despite their shortcomings in the playoffs, you have to say, of what's remaining in the East, when the dust is settled, this is one of the teams that you can see finishing off. But to get it back to the Philadelphia 76ers, Joel Embiid is healthy. They could be on a dominant run. If Paul George is the Paul George that we saw with the Clippers, with the OKC Thunder, what we've seen previously, we want to go forward all the way back to his days as an Indiana Pacer, if he is somewhat that version or variation of those three guys into one, then this is a dominant Philadelphia 76ers team. And they have some dude named Tyrese Maxey. I don't know. He's
Jared
pretty
McCain,
good.
too. We can't forget about him.
Jared
He
McCain
was great
coming
last
back as
year.
well. And I love the pickup of VJ Edgecombe, with him being drafted for Philly at that 3 spot for them. So this is a team that, talent-wise, pace-wise, the amount of headaches they can give head coaches and defenders, it can be scary. But can you depend on Joel Embiid? That's the thing. And I'm a guy that lives my life glass half full. I'm very positive. I'm an optimist for sure. But not with Joel Embiid. I can't. I'll put it down, but I put it down reluctantly with my money.
Yeah. I think that's fair. I mean, I think the NBA world would love to see a full season of Joel Embiid. He could win the MVP next season if he's fully healthy. Like, he has put together MVP type. Maybe that's someone. And let's check on that. Joel Embiid. I'm not even seeing him on the odds board at BetMGM right now. And I'm scrolling pretty quickly here, but so maybe we have to keep an eye on. That does say a ton. He's not even on the board. But I mean, oh, I'm sorry. Yes, he is. He's 100-1. I had to do a little command app to search there. 100-1. That's still worth it. That might be worth it. Little money down there.
Get in now.